Hi, my name's Kevin, and welcome to my next video. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about prophecy. But before I get going, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to the people out there who provided words of support and encouragement to me over this past week. I'd initially planned to do this video on Friday, but for some reason, this really strong depression and just pall of negativity came over me, and I was filled with negative self-talk and self-defeating thoughts, and so I just put it off. And I put a little post on Twitter stating that basically that I was feeling down and wasn't going to do a video, and that I was thinking about just quitting doing videos entirely. I was really surprised that some people posted in the comments to my post that they too were feeling down. Someone posted that they had struggled through a crippling depression, weren't able to sleep, and none of their coping mechanisms were working. Another person commented that they too had been feeling down. Someone posted on a separate post that they had a really bad panic attack, like one of the worst ones they'd had in a long time. And so it seems like whatever was going on, there was definitely some negative, unsettled energy going around, and it wasn't just me picking up on it. It seems like it was impacting a lot of different people. And so today, I kind of want to talk about prophecy, and I also want to put it in the context of what's going on. And I think the fact that so many different people were feeling that negativity and feeling that anxiety, those energies, is a pretty good indication of exactly what I'm going to be talking about. And I guess you could say symptoms of the times we're in. Um, I wanted to start out with saying that it's probably understandable that anybody would be feeling a little bit of depression or anxiety, especially people who have some sense of empathy or compassion. There's so many things going on in the world today that are just such big challenges and honestly tragedies. The wildfires burning in California, in Canada, you have them in Greece, Siberia. I mean, there's a lot of wildfires and they're causing a lot of damage, not only to structures, but I think about all the wildlife that's impacted, and it's hard. Of course, you think about COVID and what's going on with that. There's all kinds of challenges with that. You think about what happened in Afghanistan this last week, and if you're an American, there's a lot of negative connotations about that. It brings back memories of Vietnam and different missteps that we've made. So there's a lot of things going on. The flooding, there was some floods in Tennessee this last weekend that killed, it was 10 people last I heard, and I think it was even more. And then there's the flooding in China and Germany. So there's a lot of earth changes going on right now for sure. And it doesn't take a prophet to know those things were going to happen. We knew about those back in the 70s, 80s. Scientists were telling us a long time ago that if we didn't change, these things were going to happen, these earth changes. I guess what is surprising is how rapidly and how severely they're coming on. I was pretty much blown away when they had that 120-degree temperature in Canada here like a month ago. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 120 degrees is hot here. I mean, we're more used to it, but that's still a pretty hot temperature. So to have that in Canada, I think they had like 116 or 117 in Portland. It's just astonishing. And anyone who would claim that, oh, it's normal to have these fluctuations, they're just fooling themselves, because it is normal to have fluctuations, but not on the frequency and severity that we're seeing right now. And so, in the context of prophecy, there's the aspect that the scientists told us that this was going to happen, but there's a lot of something I don't think some people are aware of is that we know, I think a lot of us here in the West know about Christian prophecy. We know about, the prophets told about the end times would come, Revelation, and, God would return to judge everybody or whatever, or Jesus would return. And, there's the teaching of the rapture, that all the good people would be taken away and stuff, which I don't think that's actually in the Bible, but anyway. But I think what a lot of people don't know, or some people, this audience may be a little more hip to it, but is that there are a lot of prophecies from other world religions and other spiritual traditions that also talk about a time when there would be great cataclysm, great changes, and that basically what would happen would be a result of mankind, of humankind. Again, I'm going back to my divine feminine. I don't like to say mankind, it's humankind. But there would be a time that would come when, as a result of humans not following the advice of the prophets and the spiritual people who came before and told us that we need to live in balance with nature, we need to extend more compassion, we need to think about our fellow human beings, we need to think about the planet, that as a result of not doing those things, really, really challenging times would come. And so what we're seeing now is basically the culmination. The prophecies are coming true. The interesting thing about some of the spiritual prophecies is that they go back way before, some of them go to hundreds, thousands of years before the industrial age ever even began. So when I think about that, to me, it's very intriguing to think that, maybe there's really is something to this. In other words, one of the traditions and prophecies, and I've shared this one on my webpage, on my blog, is the Hopis had a prophecy, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing right here in this video. You can go look it up yourself if you'd like. They actually delivered an address at the United Nations, and I think it was 1991. I'll put a link in the bottom after I get this done. But they actually delivered an address at the United Nations to deliver this prophecy because they were getting the message from their creator, their spirit guides, whatever, that the time was short. Like, we needed to change what we were doing and do it now, or else we were going to go into this, I think it's the 5th cycle, but basically what's called the Great Purification. And it would be a time of great cataclysm and great change. And I think it's pretty clear from the way things have gone since 1990 that nobody listened. At least most people didn't listen. Corporations and businesses and governments certainly didn't listen. And so basically I guess what I'm trying to say is we are living in some very extraordinary times. And it's not just a matter of the climate changes and all the societal changes, but I believe, and a lot of the prophecies talked about, changes going on a spiritual level as well. If just, I guess, kind of a little disclaimer right here, if you're a big Trump supporter, or you are a supporter of, like, what happened January 6th and QAnon and stuff and that sort of thing, you're probably not going to enjoy this video. So I would probably encourage you to turn it off now and maybe find something else, because my personal views on prophecy and the times we're in relates to what's going on with that whole philosophy or mind frame or whatever you want to call it. And it's not a positive view of it, I guess you could say. So it's not to judge anyone necessarily. It's not to badmouth anybody. It's just my personal opinions and views, but I'm not going to hold back on that because I'm afraid of offending anybody or afraid of pissing anybody off. So I'm just giving everybody fair warning now. But anywho, talking about that, so basically there's the concept of in Christian prophecy, Hopi prophecy, and most of them, and when I say most of them, some of the other ones I'm talking about, there's actually a Buddhist prophecy about a Buddhist avatar coming back. There's prophecy, I believe it was the Aztecs who had Quetzalcoatl, who was who's prophesied to come back. So there's a bunch of them, and I'll throw a link to a blog post I did about it. That's actually pretty good. It has a bunch of different ones. But the point is that the prophet said that during this time, there would be, how can I put it? Like, there would be the extremes. Like, things would come to their extreme ends. Like, people who were compassionate and kind and loving would go more that way, and they would be more compassionate. And those who were more selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, cruel, they would go more that way, and things would become more divided, more partisan, and more extremes. And if you look at the world, that's exactly what's happening. You have I think the best example is the current anti-vax, anti-mask movement in the United States. You have people who refuse to believe science, which is pretty much unequivocally states that masking does help prevent the spread of COVID. Vaccination drastically reduces your chances of being hospitalized or dying if you get COVID. It's based on science, which is, I look at it as kind of the prophecy of the modern day. But you have this whole group of people who choose to not believe the truth. They choose to not believe the facts. They choose to believe someone who, I guess you could Donald Trump and his sycophants who are spreading this disinformation, and in allegiance to that mind, that belief system, they eschew facts, they eschew science, they don't want to hear anything about it. And so what's happening now is you have these camps of individuals, I guess, growing, you could say, and it's become very black and white. It's not, there's very few people on the fence. Like if people are against masks, they're at the school board meetings yelling and screaming and threatening people and saying, you're not going to make our kids wear masks. Um, there are people on the pro side who can get very excited and stuff too. And I apologize in advance if I seem to fall into the pro mask, pro vax side. I believe very strongly in science, and as much as people on the other side like to argue it, it's not arguable. Um, so, so when we think about that, in my personal view, there's a really good book that I read, and I highly recommend it to anybody out there. It's called Dark Star Rising, and I believe the author's name is Gary Lachman. I'll put the link in the bottom. It's basically Magic and Power and the Age of Trump, and it basically talks about how, um, for lack of a better term, the dark, I guess you call them quote unquote dark forces, the forces of ignorance, of selfishness, of hate, are utilizing a form of magic, a form of occult powers or occult capabilities to influence the minds of people who are influenceable, causing them to believe false narratives and basically do their bidding. Um, so it's an excellent book, and if you read it with an open mind, it's very, very eye-opening. It's very prophetic in its own right, because I believe he wrote it just before Trump became president or just after, but it's an excellent book. It talks a lot about the use of memes. It talks a lot about the use of social media, of Twitter and Facebook, and how these narratives and memes get ingrained in people's minds and how they manipulate people. Another great resource for this whole dynamic is the movie The Great Hack. If you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend it. It also talks about the use of Facebook in particular during Trump's campaign and the way that they targeted and influenced people based on their beliefs. And I mean, basically the beliefs that the energies, the emotions, whatever you want to say, is hatred, anger, and division. I mean, if you think about the prototypical person who's at an anti-mask rally, there was a video this last week of this guy with blonde dreads, and he's in a school board meeting, and he's just screaming at the top of the lungs, "They're coming for you! They're coming for your kids! They're gonna Fauci you! Sieg Fauci! Sieg Fauci!" I mean, the guy is just going insane. And that's the kind of energy that they're creating. And I want to take a little sidebar here. Sidebar, heavy topic. So shout out to an author that I really like, a person I like, Diana Pasulka, Professor Diana Pasulka. She wrote a book called American Cosmic. And if you're in the UFO Twitter community, you probably heard of it. If you haven't, you have to go pick it up and read it. It's a fantastic book. It's one of the best I've read on it. Not sure why it doesn't get more press, but excellent, excellent book. In the book, she talks about something that I found especially intriguing that's not entirely related to UFOs, but she talked about something she called, I believe it's the book experience. Basically, it's an experience where you come into possession of a book through almost like mystical means, like a book on the topic you're looking for, and it comes to you at a time when you don't expect it, in a way you don't expect it. It's almost like I talk a lot about coincidences and synchronicities. It's like a book that just seems to be like almost magical the way it comes to you. And the reason I'm saying all that is because I have just such a book. So this little nugget right here, The Ultimate Frontier, this book right here, well, actually, I don't think this is the exact one. This is a copy, but little short story. So back in 1991, I believe it was, might have been 92, I was with some friends partying at a bar in Tempe, drinking, doing things that 21, 22-year-old guys do. After we'd been drinking for a while, we met some guys there who went to ASU and had an apartment close by. So we went to their place for a little after party partying. So we were there drinking with them, probably smoking some weed. Um, and one of the guys came out, and keep in mind, we're drinking, talking about music, girls, whatever, partying. And this guy comes out and he has this book. And he looks at me and he says, I can't use this book because I'm full of dark. But I see that you're full of light, and I think you can use this book, so I want to give you this book. And it was just the weirdest thing because we're out drinking and partying, and I'm like, okay. So I took the book. I didn't read it immediately, but I kept it. And eventually I read the book. And when I did, I was like, holy crap. Now, full disclaimer, there's some stuff in the book, as with many of these books, that there's a forecast, a prophecy that didn't come true. There's some stuff about they want to build their own community. So with a lot of these types of books, I find that there's always some stuff. There's some stuff you take and some stuff you leave. But the general philosophy that talks about is like incredible. And I want to read this little part talking about Trump, talking about that whole thing. So there's a concept in this book of what they refer to as black mentalists. And basically black mentalists are people kind of like what Gary Lockman in his book Dark Star Rising talks about. They're people who are very intelligent. And if you are in the UFO community, you've heard the stories of the guy, I can't remember his name, but that started JPL, Aleister Crowley. They were all into the occult and into some of this. But these black mentalists are basically priests, and they are very knowledgeable about psychology, about mysticism, about occultism, about symbolism, and they use their knowledge of that to manipulate people's minds basically, and to keep control, to gain and keep control of society, of countries, of governments, and keep doing the things they want to do. And if you look at the way the world is right now, with the fact that we've trashed the climate, we know what's going to happen, but yet what's continuing to happen, when you think about things like the COVID response and things, you have to think, who's really in charge of this? Like, there's something very dark about it. And I think we all sense that. And that's why people are getting depressed. That's why people are getting anxious. That's why the panic attacks, because we can see the insane darkness of some of this stuff. And so with that in mind, I want to read this little passage out of this book. It's talking about the black mentalists. And it's saying that priests have used telepathic mass hypnosis to dominate whole nations. Today they still function on a worldwide scale by mental means. Their evil operates through human instruments who are unwillingly made to conform to the telepathic bidding of the mentalist. These instruments are readily recruited from among those persons who are inclined to fear, to hate, to lust for power, and to seek privilege over others. The people who fall into the grip of the insidious, unbelievably clever mentalists are characteristically ignorant in their belief that they are especially qualified to rule over others, and often believe themselves to be divinely inspired, unable to do wrong. The major evils in this world today can ultimately be attributed to the black mentalists and their dupes. I mean, that sounds pretty darn close to what's going on, especially when you look at, again, what's going on with just everything, with the anti-mask, the anti-vax, the climate. And so I guess the takeaway from this video today would be that there is an effort going on, whether or not skeptics want to believe it. And there's a part of me that says this is just all BS too. Like, this is just too much. I'm very scientifically minded. I can't believe this weird hokey. But there is an effort going on of people who, for lack of a better word, are, I don't like to use the word evil, but they're not good people. They don't have the best intentions of all humans in mind. And they are very intelligent. They're very savvy. They do believe in occult things. They're very knowledgeable about symbolism, the subconscious, the collective unconscious that Carl Jung talked about, archetypes. They're able to utilize the symbolism and archetypes to really mess with us. And they're coming after good people. So if you're a good person and you have empathy and you have compassion and you speak up for the truth and you believe in a higher power and you're trying to do the right thing, you're a target. This book, and many other books that are similar, we're targets at this time because this is things are coming to a head. You know what I mean? It doesn't take, like I said, you can watch the news, the IPCC report. Humanity's on the brink. Like we have the climate, pandemics, the COVID. I mean, there's things happening right now that are existential crises. And that's not even to talk about some of my other favorite topics, which are AI, which there's another possible existential crisis. There's solar phenomenon. I personally believe that there could be a major solar event, which other people have foreseen too. So there's a lot of barrels pointing directly at us. There's a lot of guns. But the thing that I would like to leave with today, because I don't want to leave this video on a downer, is the fact that all of those prophecies talked about this time, and they also talked about something else. All of those prophecies talked about a great figure, a Messiah, a Redeemer, a champion, a comforter that would come back to help people like us at this point in time. I used to think when I was little that it'd be this, being coming down out of the clouds and Jesus would come back and save us all. But that's not how it's going to work. That spirit, that being, that entity is going to come to each one of us. In other words, each one of us has that little bit of spark inside of us to carry and to channel that entity, whatever that entity is to us, to have that comfort, to have that power, to have that protection. We only have to work on finding a way to bring that out, to recognize it. And what I would like to do and what I'd like to see, and I'm going to start probably posting more about, is how we as a spiritual community of open-minded, good, compassionate people can work together to create some type of network where we can help each other weather this time of great change and tribulation. I'm not necessarily worried about the physical stuff. It is daunting. I mean, I fully expect there to be some major challenges. I just don't want to lose myself. I don't want to lose my faith. I don't want to lose my hope. When that darkness and negativity came over me this week, it was very unsettling. And I know from reading other people's posts, it was for them too. I have some ideas about how we can do that, and I'd like to explore those. I would invite anybody who watches this to leave some comments below, or catch me on Twitter at Quantum Prophet and give me your ideas about how we can do that, because I think the time has passed to, make excuses for what we believe and to feel like we're silly and, oh, I'm ashamed of this and I don't want people to think it. We're long past that. And I want to give a shout out to my friend whose initials are KF. I want to maintain her anonymity, but she's been really a wonderful resource of helping me to believe in myself and the message that I have, which we all have access to. I've heard other people, good friends on Twitter and other places, they're getting the same message. But I want all of us to find a way to really unite and to share, to build that energy, to build like an actual, there's something that's called an egregore, which if you look into it, it's like a psychic entity that's created by multiple people focusing on something and creating it. There's definitely some negative ones out there, and I think as a spiritual community, we could create one of those ourselves, and I would like to work on that. There's something that's kind of come to me lately called the Grand Attunement. I'm looking for some concept that isn't already tainted with preconceived notions of what it would be like. The Great Purification is the Hopis, and I honor and respect them and love them very much. So that one's kind of already taken. You have Revelations, you have the Great Awakening, the Enlightenment, but the Grand Attunement is something that came to me that there's no energy that I know of associated with it yet. And so I would like to imbue that concept with our ideas of what that spiritual strength and what that spiritual, I guess you could say like spiritual fortress, that mental, psychic, spiritual fortress would look like to help us combat or defend against those black mentalists. So we as a community can keep our souls, our spirits, our minds together without being victims of their attacks, because it's happening, like I said. So if you're going through this, if you're feeling, severe depression, severe anxiety, panic attacks, just seemingly out of nowhere, know that you're not alone. You know, maybe you're like me and you've suffered from these things a lot in the past and thought you'd gotten past them and now they're coming back. Just know that you're not alone. There's stuff going on. And I think that as a community, we can work together on finding ways to, at the very least, maintain ourselves through this. So I have some more ideas about that, but again, that's for another video. But I appreciate you taking this time with me today. I'm not sure if I covered what I'd hoped to, but there's always so much more to talk about than I want to take your time. So again, probably follow up with another video kind of going more into what that idea is. But I invite you to leave your ideas, your thoughts, any messages that come to you. If you have any really cool coincidences or synchronicities that happen around this, pay attention to those and please share them with me. I'm really huge on those, and I think that's how spirit, the universe, your spirit guides, God, whatever you want to call it, I think that's how it communicates with it. At least with me in my life, it is. So if you have any about this whole topic, please share those because I would love to hear about them. So be sure to stay strong this week. Pray if you can pray. If you like to pray, meditate. If you're open to that, take some time to focus on Mother Earth. It's the full moon tonight, so there's some definite divine feminine energy we can tap into there. And let's try to hold each other up in light and love, and we can get through this together. So thank you for taking the time with me today. I wish you peace, love, and light, and many blessings to you and yours this week. Thank you.